everyone, and welcome to Women Power Pittsburgh, a podcast where we discuss women doing impactful things in the Pittsburgh area. Today, we are speaking with Alliyson Feldman, who runs the Upper St. Clair Democratic Committee. Upper St. Clair is a township about 40 minutes south of Pittsburgh. We'll explore Allison's journey to this role, what work she does in the community and political organization, what that work means to her, and other things. Stay tuned.
So my name's Alliyson Feldman, and I've been a community member here in Upper St. Clair since October 2019. I am a Pennsylvanian by heart. I spent most of my adolescent life here in Pennsylvania, but much more rural. And we came back to the area to be in closer proximity to Children's Hospital, and because of the excellent social services that the Commonwealth offers. So when we moved back, I was looking for a way to be involved and kind of settle in to our new home. And COVID hit, which kind of rocked everybody's world. And to be in a new place and seeking out community, I turned towards my local Democratic committee. And it was not necessarily the most welcoming space.
Oh, okay.
So I had been following the launch of Red Wine and Blue out of Ohio. And they were giving such a great message to moms specifically about gathering a community and how to activate on a really local neighborhood level and how to make that impactful. So I thought I'd give it a go. And I found some Facebook groups that had a progressive slant here in Upper St. Clair and invited people to gather 6 feet apart, masks on, in lawn chairs in backyards. And that's where we really started to develop a community.
That's amazing. So it kind of started like when you got back here, and that was one of the questions I had, which is like how it really because like so do you now like head up USC Dems and you're like the chair of that?
Yeah, so I've been in politics my whole life. My grandfather was a politician in Pennsylvania. He was pretty high up in the Republican Party.
Okay.
But something my grandfather always instilled in us was like deep roots of service and community building and being part of the community in a meaningful way. And that public servants are just that, they're public servants. And he was always really, really prickly when someone called a politician a leader. They're not leading me anywhere, he would say. So making sure that we have good representation at all levels of our government has always been something that was instilled in me with that service background. So it's something I've always been a part of, I've always done. I went to school initially for poli-sci, and my very first poli-sci class, about 6 weeks in, this professor who I just worshiped. He was really well known in the AP circles. He had done some really phenomenal journalism. I just felt lucky to be in his presence. He asked me what I was doing in his class, and wouldn't there be somewhere more fitting for me because I looked like someone who was there to get their MRS. I dropped the class and went as a art history major.
Wow, okay.
I believed him. And as I've gotten older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I wanted to make sure that part of my path was building up young women, that it didn't matter who said that to them. They had enough self-confidence to know they belong in all spaces at all times, and that their opinions are valid, their perspective is valid, and most of the time their work gets more things done in a shorter period of time than a bunch of men gathered in a room having a philosophical conversation about politics.
Yeah. And that's really powerful. And yeah, that's a crazy experience to, especially like someone who like you looked up to so much to like tell you that. I can't like, that's insane, but it's really amazing how you've like come out of that and like done so much work in the community. And that kind of leads me to My question, I know you had mentioned to me once that like you worked as a storyteller for Planned Parenthood, and I was really curious about that. I would love to hear more.
So, one of the things that we found in social movements is that connecting people to real life stories is really impactful. So, if you look at any political, ideological conversation or debate, you always have that one person that's like, well, I know someone that this law affected in that way. Well, they probably don't really know anyone. They just heard an idiom about something that felt real to them. So they've made it part of their belief system. So something that Planned Parenthood's been really good at and really good at since 2019 is connecting people to stories, real life stories, and making women's reproductive care and birthing people's reproductive care multidimensional, because it is, it's healthcare. Nothing's streamlined in it. So the program here in Allegheny County was paused during COVID and then relaunched about 6 months ago. And I was lucky enough to be part of that because I had shared my story um, with the Fetterman campaign.
Okay.
And he ran 2 years ago, and I was in USA Today about it, sharing my story and specifically my surviving a stroke while pregnant. And that kind of put me on the radar for Planned Parenthood. So I felt really fortunate when they reached out, and I was planning on doing this regionally. And then they opened up the national class. So each year they tried to get storytellers from each state to work with National Planned Parenthood in lobbying efforts and also in just promotion of what Planned Parenthood does and reproductive rights on a whole. So I got to go to DC and have the time of my life. I felt like I was in college again. You know, you get to a certain level where you're like, do I get to have new experiences like this? And I did. It was amazing. I can't say enough good things about the organization. And it brought together, I think there were 17 of us that were able to gather. And we got to speak to the people in places of power. We had a 3.5 hour meeting with um, staff from the White House and the Biden administration. They listened to 9 of us speak our truths and our lived experiences. And we're hoping that they take that information and form policy
Yeah.
and can use that to protect the rights of people across the country. We did lobbying. I was welcomed open arms by Senator Bob Casey, who's up for re-election and really needs our votes so that we can hold the Senate at a federal level. And of course, John Fetterman's staff welcomed us in and listened to storytellers from right here in Western New York and what our experience is here. And they really do a great job at Planned Parenthood at not only preparing you for that experience, because I mean, we're trauma dumping on people, a very
Yeah.
real thing. And for a lot of us, it was, if not the worst thing that happened to us, it was close to it. And for other people, it was just a medical decision that was necessary for them to continue to make the decisions for their lives. So bringing us together and giving us a space to share that and give a glimpse into the multidimensional layers of reproductive health care, what that looks like, what it should look like, and why we deserve it, why it's a human right. It's a really cool program, and we know that it's impactful. It's impactful at a federal level with legislators, it's impactful at a state level, and it's really impactful with voters. So anytime we can get into a space and share our stories, we know that is a good chance that that person's going to get to a ballot box and help to push forward reproductive rights.
Yes, that is so amazing. And again, as a young woman, it was like when Roe versus Wade and like the Dobbs decision
Mm-hmm.
happened, it was like, I don't think I fully understood because that was what, like 2 or 3 years ago.
Years
3 years
ago,
ago,
yep.
3 years ago. And I was like still in middle school and I was like not 100% understanding what happened. And then I kind of like got in and did more research and it was truly terrifying. So I
Mm-hmm.
admire all the work that you do. And like just learning about it has been again scary, but again also knowing that so many people have like so much care about it and are like putting so much effort into it is truly amazing and we really need that.
Yeah, and it was I have to speak about my littles. I was given the best title I've ever given, I think, other than mom, was a few of the young women that I got to meet and work with in DC have adopted me as their auntie. But it's really like the beautiful audacity, and I don't mean audacity in a negative connotation. I mean it in the most basic form of the word. The audacity of these women at 19 and 21 to go to DC and speak to red state legislators about their abortion experiences was so empowering to me to see this. I mean, it's your generation that's going to get all this back. We lost it through complacency. And it's
Yes.
only through us working and fighting together and us lifting your voices up and the youth's voices up, that's going to bring it back and bring us back better from what we had, because from what we had was basement level rights, and we need so much more than that.
Yes. And kind of just along the same vein, like it is so like sometimes so scary and like draining to be doing that work, like talking to legislators, talking to people who like fundamentally disagree with like everything you're saying. How do you like keep going, like doing the work that you do every single day? Like what keeps you going?
It's a lot of different things. I think it's a mix of stuff. I hate injustice to start with, but when you have reaped the benefits of the social safety nets that we have in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and in other places in our country, it's hard to have accepted that help and then not made sure other people had it.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that, I recognize I was fed as a child because we received food stamps. I received an education because of the systems that were in place for public education and parochial education in our country, and that freedom from religion, that I could practice my religion and seek an education, and the two didn't have to be mutually exclusive. Having health care for my kids, having been on Medicaid as a disabled person post-stroke, like these are things that kept me afloat and gave me the opportunity to keep going and build a family and do better than I was and keep going up that ladder. And that's how it should be for everybody. So I'm not someone that can take things and not make sure everybody else has it given to them too. And I know their work and I know the system isn't perfect, but I know that we can continue to build on it, and taking it apart it'll be a disaster.
Yes.
That keeps me going. And you guys keep me going.
Yeah.
Meeting you and knowing that you had this dedication to this already, like it lit a fire under me, because it's not just for me, it's for everybody else. And it's that adage, right? So like, you saw my little candle, lit your candle from it, and then we can keep going. And soon, hopefully, we don't have to set ourselves on fire, but we can light the room up
Yes.
and, get the shadows out of the dark corners, clean up the cobwebs, and make a more perfect democracy. That's what we're working for.
Yeah. And so like as like for lighting the candles and everything, like what would you say to like especially like younger voters and younger women now who are like seeing the state of the world as it is and are like, I don't even know what to do at this point? Because I've like seen so much sentiment of like that where people just don't even feel like going out and like voting or putting effort in because they feel like nothing's gonna change.
Um, Change is slow. It can be really slow, but I think your generation has experienced something that very few other generations have experienced. You watch the world stop. You watch the world come to a screeching halt. And while it wasn't all that global pandemic, who we were as a nation and who we became as a nation in the midst of that pandemic happened really fast.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the fact that you could see that change and how quickly it can come, given the right circumstances, that you will all engage and be part of the circumstances that bring us back to the trajectory that we were on when we had Barack Obama as our president, when we had a full, all three branches of the government for that short 2 years. And I do want to speak about voting for a second, because I had a conversation with a young woman that wants to vote third party. And I hear you. I remember wanting to vote third party and thinking we can do it and we can change this nation and we can start a revolution and we can fix our democracy that way. You're not wrong, but people also miss the caveats of how that can happen. This young woman didn't realize that we don't even have a third party candidate in Pennsylvania. So you're going to have to get all of these people that want to vote third party to spell the name right and write it in. And it's got to be enough of a majority for it to actually carry the state. And the likelihood of that happening just mathematically is impossible.
Yeah.
So we have to work within the system that we have right now and change it from within to get the outcome that we're all looking for. All of those little votes do matter. I remember in New York State, a lot of people say, well, my vote doesn't count because New York City carries us. If you're living in Allegheny, you're the New York City of Pennsylvania. Allegheny County covers the state. We outvote the other end. So who votes here in Allegheny and how they vote determines the Commonwealth in your presidential election. So those votes lead up to the Electoral College. And if we don't get the Electoral College votes, then we don't elect a Democratic president.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting, like the kind of like idealism of like, I want things to change, so I want to vote for something different, but then like being practical and being like, well, we can't do that. And I think that's a really important lesson to learn, I think, in politics, because it's like you can't win it all. I don't think you're ever able to like win it, but like you have to pick the choice that's like going to align best with what you want to do.
Right. Yeah. And right now, I mean, all eyes should be looking on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
We have to put people in place that can change the laws to get the court under control, whether that be adding more seats, whether that be, there's a very good possibility in the next 4 years, we're going to have 2 to 3 Supreme Court retirements.
Yeah.
That could flip the court from being, clearly right ideology, help me with the word.
Ideology, yeah.
Thank you. Ideologically, that's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
And make it a more fairly balanced court.
Yes.
So it's all of these pieces. It's a house of cards, but the foundation of that house of cards is voting.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, for like, especially for like younger people, because it's like, I've done some voter registration in the past and I've like talked to people and they're kind of like, yeah, like they've either registered or they're just like, oh, I haven't even really like thought about, like, I'll get around to doing it. And it's like, I think, and it's like hard for me to kind of understand, maybe because I'm like, I've been kind of in like the wanting to go into politics and kind of been more socially engaged, but it's like, that's not everything. So hopefully we can change that through like this podcast episode and just doing the community work. But that kind of leads me to the question, if there are people in areas that like really want to take action, but they're struggling to like start and like find a place to like do that, like what would you recommend?
So there's always in Pennsylvania, prior to us moving the primary, in the Commonwealth, we've always voted every 6 months. So that means there's always a campaign. There's always a campaign. There's always a campaign staff that needs people to do something. So that's always a great place to start. Look up what local elections are coming up, countywide, statewide, federally. They're always looking for help. It's a great way to learn about the issues and learn about the candidates. Do your research online first. That's always a great place. Your local Democratic committee is always a wonderful place. Some school districts do allow some political clubs, also a great place. Organizations that you care about are also really great, like Planned Parenthood, Moms Demand Action, March for Our Lives, Everytown, Ceasefire, PA Schools Work, the Keystone Progress. If you type into Google things that you care about, and wanting to get involved, more than likely you're going to get a good direction of someone that could use your help.
And so everyone should definitely do that. And I think it's like, I feel like people don't understand, like, they'll be like, oh, I guess I'll vote, but they don't understand, like, every single decision made by like politicians every single day is going to have some effect on what our daily lives look like. And I think
Right.
for us, maybe like we haven't exactly like come out into the real world yet, and it's hard to fully understand, but even now it's affecting us. It's like the way the world works, the way like we see what's on the news and everything. So I think civic engagement is something that needs to be addressed more in schools. And like in my like our school at least like has a government class that's like
Mm-hmm.
makes us do a civic engagement project, but then like probably a lot of schools in the area don't have that or like aren't able to have that. So I think civic engagement effort in the community is also extremely important.
Right. And, it's really easy to fact check your local representatives. You can Google, like here in Upper St. Clair, Devlin Robinson is our state senator, and we're split for our state house. So it's either Natalie Mahalik, who's a Republican, or Dan Miller, who is the majority Democratic whip for the House. It's really easy to see how they voted, when they voted, because a lot of these people don't like to show up to do their job. And you can get grades from the NRA, from Planned Parenthood, from public education, from unions. You can see how these people are voting. And it's easy to then look at what bills they've sponsored, what caucuses they're a part of, and see where their loyalties lie. And when you take that idea that these people are leaders out of your head and remember they work for you, doesn't matter your age, they work for you, that you're allowed to call them. You're allowed to tell them what you think and how you would like to be represented. And they only get to keep their job if their constituents are happy and
Yeah.
we, agree to elect them again. So hearing from you and making phone calls or sending emails or posting on their Facebook pages is really powerful. And if I was in high school right now, this voucher program would have me terrified, especially when I've put the amount of effort that I know kids at Upper St. Clair have put into their education. You don't want to lose the funding and the resources that your schools are getting because Jeffrey Yass wants to dismantle the public education system. And the only people that are between you and that happening are Devlin, Natalie, Governor Shapiro, Dan Miller. Call them. They need to know that you're engaged and you care and you like your public education. It's a really simple thing to do, and it will have a direct effect on how you go to school next year.
Yeah. And finally, for probably this is going to be the last question, but and you kind of hit this in the beginning, but like for any, especially young women experiencing doubts, like the political system kind of seems to be against us, especially if you're like a woman of color or like like someone in part of the LGBTQ community. And how do you tell them to like overcome their doubts or like continue to do the work that they do?
I don't know if I have a magic answer to that. I know that, so I'm a Swiftie, whether she wants me or not. But my theme song for my political life is The Man, because it's true. It rings true. I have to say things louder, sometimes 4 times in a row. I sometimes have to take my idea back from someone that they've heard me say and then run with. It's not easy, but there is a community of us. And I think as a white cis woman, I have to make sure that I'm standing back and giving space and holding that space for women that have had it and people of minorities, even though it's not really minorities because we're slowly becoming the majority, but people that maybe are marginalized in our community, and making sure that I am holding space for them and stepping back and letting them into circles that I've pushed my way into.
Yeah.
So if we aren't being really cognizant of not just leaving the door open, but putting our foot in it to make sure everybody else gets through, that we're not going to get to where we need to be. And one of the parts that has made my work in Allegheny County is I found a really amazing group of people that hold space for me and that I hold space for them. And we make sure we're checking in and really cognizant that we're lifting up the voices that aren't being heard behind us and stepping out of the way so that they can push forward most of the time in front of us. That's how I see where I need to be.
And that's actually really interesting because that's something I've thought a lot about, because it's like, yeah, I'm a woman of color and that makes me disadvantaged in some places, but also I like being in Upper St. Clair, going to the school I have, the education that I have, the resources that I have, like I can use that to like help someone else who doesn't have the same level of resources. And I think that's something that we like lose sight of so often, especially is like if you're a woman, like you already have so much against you, like you're trying to push forward, but you have to remember that there are people with like even much less that you have to kind of let get in the door as well. So I really appreciate that part of it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's, it's a learning curve, and it's being cognizant that I'm constantly making mistakes and I'm constantly coming from my perspective, and my perspective is my own and it's steeped in bias. And until I'm open to accept feedback about my bias and take that feedback and educate myself, because it's not anybody else's responsibility to educate me, that I feel like I'm getting to a place where I can be a placeholder and help move people forward past me, because those are the voices we need to hear. And that's part of the thing that I've learned from Planned Parenthood that I appreciated so much, was hearing the history of Planned Parenthood, what it was based in, where it's become, and what my role as a white cis middle-class woman is in storytelling. Because if you'll hear from me, then I don't want to leave you with my story. I want to leave you with the fact that this happened to me. I had every advantage just by my birthright, and it still happened to me. So I need you to look past me and look at Black maternal mortality rates in our country. I need you to look at healthcare for Black and brown women in this country. I need you to look at transgender and gender affirming care that's in this country, because I'm on fire, but they've already burned. So you've got to push this whole thing through. So I commend you that you're already looking at the place that you're standing in and thinking of how I can push this forward for others, because that's what it takes. Yeah. It's a true sisterhood, whatever kind of sister. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's probably it. Thank you so much for coming and talking. And it was really valuable to get all the insights, and I appreciate you taking the time. And that's a wrap on this episode, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you come back soon for the next episode of Women Power Pittsburgh.